So, what happens when you ask ChatGPT to write an intro for Campus Comics Cast? Well, this is what you get. Welcome to Campus Comics. Meet our cast of lovable characters as they navigate the ups and downs of college life. From the overachieving student government president to the slacker best friends, our diverse cast will have you laughing and relating to their experiences. Join us as we follow their adventures and learn about friendship, love, and personal growth. Get ready for a wild ride on Campus Comics. What the heck was that? But anyway, thank you, ChatGPT, for that intro. This is episode 151 of the Campus Comics Cast. My name is Scott Reed, and I am joined on this episode by
Mike Atchison
and Chad Schubert.
And of course, this is the Campus Comics Cast. No love or personal growth will be occurring in this episode.
What is ChatGPT?
What's that?
What is ChatGPT?
Oh, you don't know about ChatGPT?
It's the AI that develops.
Yeah, it's an artificial intelligence created by the OpenAI open source consortium, and basically it's in the news a lot right now because you can go to this, you can type in, write me a paper on, Prince in the 1990s, his Purple Rain album, and it will generate a paper for you, and then you can students are turning those things in as assignments. So I thought, well, let's just have it write an intro to the Campus Comics Cast.
At least the intro is really not, it's harmless. The paper, it's just a continuation of the dumbing down of society by relying on technology and AI. It's just horrid.
It is. It's bad. So, but there'll be more about ChatGPT later in this episode.
Oh boy.
But for now, this is the Campus Comics Cast. This is episode 151, and we are, of course, the official podcast for Muddy Monster Comics, located at 1422 Walnut Street in Murfreesboro, Illinois. And on this episode, we are going to talk to you about Clear, the Scott Snyder and
Francis Manapul.
Francis Manapul.
Yep.
Comicsology First digital series, which is coming to print pretty soon. And then we're going to, after our last episode of previews, they're releasing an absolute edition of Superman for All Seasons. So we decided just to beat that to the punch and go ahead and talk about Superman for All seasons now. So
we're
guess
so topical.
We are. So we're actually on it this time, right? We're ahead of the game for once. Sort of. No, not really. I mean, we got AI, we got books that aren't out yet. So, hey, that's something. That is something. So, all right. So I've got a pseudo synopsis for Clear. And at any point you want to stop me and comment on anything, but otherwise I'm just going to go through it, and you can, again, stop me at any point. As Shad said, written by Scott Snyder, art by Francis Manapul, was on Comicsology First. I guess it was 3 issues. I don't even remember how many issues it was. 6? Okay. Was it 6? I didn't remember. I didn't. I read it as the combined, digital.
I did too, which was confusing because there were no breaks in it for each issue, which threw me off completely.
Yeah, it was. You could kind of, if you thought about it, you could kind of see where the breaks were. Yeah. But yeah, it would be nice to have that
the cover
exactly, something along that line. So, but anyway, so this story is set in a somewhat dystopian future, where basically everybody has a built-in wetworks that allows them to see their surroundings and the world with what they call a custom veil. In this future, shared filters are basically outlawed because in the past, they have caused mass panics, mass suicide situations for people having kind of like the same mass hysteria as a result. But despite that, there is this black market that exists for these shared filters or shared veils. So in this world, we have our protagonist, Sam Dunes, who views the world in clear, which is where the title of the book comes from. So in other words, he doesn't apply a filter to anything that he sees. He works as a private investigator, and he is currently on a case where he's trying to determine if a husband is cheating on his wife by basically buying black market filters so that he can, kind of see her in a different way, see the world in a different way, see how they exist in a different way. So as if she's not good enough for him. Now, just a little back history on the character. Our protagonist's son was killed in an automobile accident when a shared veil that was actually created by his wife, Kendra, causes his vision to be blocked while he's driving. And the result of the crash is that his son's neck gets slashed and he bleeds to death. Now, we don't actually see that occur. It's just something that we're told through the course of the story. Sometime after this, and I think it's much later after this, Sam Doone's wife appears to kill herself by jumping off of a bridge. Later, when he's collecting her belongings, Doones receives a watch that has, I don't remember what the connection was to his wife, but the key piece to this watch is on the back. It is scratched, "I was murdered," which then sends Doones into this investigation into figuring out what's going on. So,
well, if I remember right, watches, like, that was an antique watch, and the older the thing is, the harder it is to veil, and so that was the purpose of giving him the watch specifically.
Yeah, it was originally a gift from him to her when she got a promotion or something.
Okay.
And she sent it back with a message and something else I'm sure we'll get to.
Right. So anyway, the rest of the story is Doones uncovers this conspiracy that involves his wife, this rogue gang of black market veil sellers, and the queen of these shared veils, known as the Widow, with the ultimate goal of being for everyone to have this shared experience. I didn't want to kind of give it all away kind of in the synopsis, but this shared experience, which is actually kind of the point where the book ends, right? So for our 6 issues. So, all right. So what are some of your thoughts on this book?
It was one of those books where you have to read it twice. I mean, it's Scott Snyder, and Scott Snyder, sometimes it can be convoluted, but I think he's just smarter than I am. So I need to read. He's had longer to think about it than me. So,
right.
So at first I was like, what the heck is this? What's that? Okay, wait, let me go back. Now, no, just read it all the way through to the end. And then when I got done, I started over. And then the second reading was so much more enjoyable. I understood better, which I kind of did from the beginning, what the social commentary was. This isn't that far of a distant scenario in the future. It's sort of a spinoff of the we believe what we're told, or what our census tells us isn't necessarily the truth. What we hear, what we see, this just takes it to another extreme where we're hardwired into a system that you can actually purchase those preferred realities. It's like VR or augmented reality. And I thought the premise was excellent. Then the noir feeling to the book was really good. Overall, I really did enjoy it. And it's probably even a triple read once I get done, or at some point when there was only a couple things I'm still not sure about, but we'll get to them as we go through it.
Is neon noir a term?
I think neo noir. Yeah, I think so. Like, I think like a noir book, but set into a future. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm thinking more of the coloring as opposed to new. Like so I'm literally neon, right?
Steampunk noir.
Well, it's very Blade Runner, right? I mean, that's kind of same
Blade
thing
Runner.
in a way, right?
Yep. I and the art. I mean, we haven't even got to Shad giving his, so I'll stop right there.
Are you
Shad's overall thoughts?
My big overall thought is, could they have shoehorned the word clear any more into this book? I keep it on clear, and then it's bolded even to top it all off. It's like, Jesus, we get it, we understand.
We're clear on that, Scott. We're clear.
Well, it's not like he's the only one. The main character is not the only one that views the world in clear. I mean, this first person that he's working for, she views the world in clear, which I guess we're supposed to say that establishes a connection between them, right?
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, so it's not that unusual.
Yeah, it's
but
not like he's a super unique, but I mean, just like anybody who thinks they're really unique, though, in the real world, they gotta talk about it all the time. Be like, look at how cool I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I did dig the story. There were some parts of it where I was like, it's okay. The clue trail was great, and I liked how the story came together. Piecing together, because it didn't give you everything on Front Street. Even the story at the very beginning was, I heard the story from this kid, or this joke from this kid. Didn't say that this is my kid that died or anything like that. It was just, I heard the story. And so that was exactly, did the same thing you did, Mike, where I finished the book and then I started right at the beginning again. It was like, I know that the story was told already again, because it kind of bookends with that joke or whatever it is. And so I went back and I was like, how far into it? I was like, oh no, that's the first panel is, this kid told me the story not too long ago, kind of a thing. So I agree. And I definitely liked all the pieces came together. There's something about it that I didn't love, but I can't really put my finger on it just yet. But
yeah, I wish I could articulate that better too. There was something I didn't. Of course, I've got a little bit of bias against Scott Snyder and the way he wrote Justice League. But this was much better than that. But still, something nagging. But if I can't explain it, then I don't have a right to say it, I guess.
Well, part of it is the storytelling, and I don't know if that's Scott Snyder's writing or Francis Manapul's artistic, storytelling, but there were pieces that are tough to follow. And like, for example, all right, so his wife that he was married to, Kendra, she's at the very beginning, as that joke is being told initially, we see her making the walk up this bridge, and she and she jumps off the bridge, right? And then of course the next thing, they're going to the morgue. Sam Dunes is viewing her body, identifying her, even though that's not the purpose of his visit. Then I'm flipping back through the book, and it's like, how does she come back? I was like, where was that point where she gets reintroduced into the story? How do they explain how that happened? And it's like, flipping through it, I can't even find that. Right?
I only can make the assumption that because her intention by the last chapter of the story, it's explained that she was really jumping in to find the widow.
She was, and then you're right there when we talk. But it still doesn't explain why was she dead in the morgue.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Okay, so it's like, how did she come back?
Maybe that's the nagging thing I couldn't.
Well, the other part, the other nagging thing is, why do they have to put the helm? Why do they have to have any kind of clear? Why is there money involved? Why does it cost to have a setting on clear? Why? Because it even costs to be on clear. and why do you have to wear this helmet? Like, there was a lot of like unexplained necessities to the
There's
story.
a lot of world building that we don't get the explanation for the world.
And you kind of just have to suspend that belief and just kind of roll with it, which is what I did reading it. But there was a little bit of that, I guess, just nagging feeling to it.
Well, and then like one of the problems that I have is, they make this big deal about the older things are, the more difficult it is to veil them. All right. If you've ever messed with any type of VR or augmented reality, the age of something makes zero difference in how tough it is to augment or hide with virtual reality. You're just putting little filters and isometric maps over the top of an object, right? And if you couldn't do it on the actual object, you build those isometric shapes outside of the object to build the thing. So it's like, that makes zero sense. So, that's a little nitpicky thing, right? But it is just enough. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. Why are you, of all the things to focus in on, you wanted to have George Washington.
It's like that was just a plot device to introduce the watch.
The watch,
yes.
Yeah.
And I guess it's this, whatever this technology is, and what is it? Who is it that said any technology sufficiently advanced is considered magic? That kind of misquoting of that quote. And I guess we're just supposed to kind of accept it as that. So.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm kind of stuck on that whole morgue thing. I'm just like, I can't get my mind off of it. There is one other piece in I don't know which chapter, but they mention a guy named Bruce. Who the heck is Bruce?
Now that I don't remember.
I don't remember Bruce.
Yeah, we need to make some notes and then reread it a third time, because I've read it twice as well, right? Read it a third time to figure out. All I can think now is They Call Me Bruce, that movie, and that was out a while
I will
back,
tell you, one of my favorite parts though was when he goes to the underground, the black market, and they shoot him, and the chemical or whatever they inject him with that makes him think that he's dying, or and gives him that, like, I thought that was a really cool thing that they did in the way that they explained the DMT, and I was like, well, that was a really cool way to you see somebody's life flash before their eyes, and that's how you get a sense of who they are and whether they're safe or what their intentions are behind everything, what kind of person they are. And I was like, well, that was probably the highlight for me of the whole story, was like that concept of being able to enact those brain chemicals in order to kind of check somebody out and see if they're cool or not.
Yeah. And I think there's some of that is derived from a real chemical or real science.
Yeah.
That there are theories that is what causes the out of body experiences that people talk about. What about so at a point he's attacked by his doppelganger, which is kind of referred to as the yellow-eyed man. That's another part where I got a little confused.
Yeah. Well, because that character appears multiple times. Once, like the first time he appears, he's with that scientist around the George Washington tree. Yeah. And first he appears as a scientist, and then he appears as George Washington with his axe, right?
Yeah.
So I am taking that to be that it is somebody who can manipulate this tech that's in everybody to be viewed as it is that he wants to be viewed. Because that happens again to Sam later on, where Sam sees himself, right? But if Sam's on clear, then why is he seeing a veil? It has to be because somebody has control
somehow
over that.
Forced a shared veil to say, this is what I look like even to you.
Yeah. So
kind of thing. And is it always his wife? Is it always his wife who is the yellow-eyed person? Because she is at the end.
Oh, could be.
I was just looking at those.
Now that you say that, I think there might be some dialogue that implies that at the end.
Because she reveals her true self at the end, and it's her that is the yellow-eyed man then. So presumably she's had that tech the whole time, and she's the one who's doing all of it.
Because we know that she's worked on this tech, because that's one of the first places he goes, is to where he sees the scientist with the tree and knows about that. So what do you know what page that was on that you're talking about? Where
the reveal?
I'm
getting there. I'm real close. It is.
I'm in the 120s right now.
It is. Yeah, it's 124.
124? Okay. But she's not yellow-eyed there, is she?
Well, if you see on 123 in the background when the millionaire's got the gun on what's his face, Sam's chin. Okay. Yeah. The veil is kind of disappearing, and then on the next page it's revealed to be her.
It's revealed to be her, right? Okay. Yes. So I guess so, and I guess maybe that explains how she can appear in the morgue to everybody if she can control everybody else's veil, right? So they're seeing
excuse. Yeah.
Whatever. You're right. This is going to have to be read again now that we're talking about this, because maybe the three of us together can figure out what's going on inside of this story.
You're providing the editor notes.
That's right.
In the comic that we needed. Say, remember back in issue 2?
Yeah.
That's this.
Yeah. So now I think and then of course that means that any character at any time during this could have actually been Kendra,
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm still struggling a little bit with the motivation. I mean, there was the one scene when we had the look-alike Sam trying to kill him.
Yep.
I mean, was she going to that great lengths to see if he's really on board with her, with her, her end-all motivation?
Well, maybe she was just pushing him as far. She doesn't kill him, so who knows?
No. Yeah, that's true. I mean,
there was so like she does this explanation about because okay, so at one point what we learn is that the reason why Sam is always on clear because he did use a black market veil one time, and he went to experience the world as if his son had lived.
Yes.
Right. So, and I think it's on her death scene where okay, spoilers. Of course, I guess we should always say spoilers. Where Kendra is there dying. And let me see if I just saw it. I'm trying to flip back to it and find it again. Where she basically explains that she found him whenever he was under the control of that veil. And that's kind of what caused her to leave and to start doing what it was that she was doing. I don't know. You guys keep talking, but
yeah, I remember what you're talking about. I'm assuming that she realized how much a veil could consume someone, and with that, because the whole plan is to remove all the veils, and even the base veil of everything for everyone to see what is true, right? Like that's her plan, is to destroy everything.
That's her end run. Yeah.
But that's not what she initially shows, because it starts with the veil that Sam experienced. And here it is. So she says, "I'm so sorry, Sam, truly. But when I came to you for help and I saw you lost in that black veil with Baxter and me, saw you so happy, I shook you, Sam. I screamed in your ear, but you pushed me away. All you wanted was to stay in there, to die in there." So that was kind of like what set her off on this course, was Sam's experience with that black market veil. So yeah. Anyway,
well,
I'm glad we're talking about this, because my grade as we talk about this is going up and up and up and up.
Same, yeah.
Well, it was up and then it was down again, and when we were all agreeing, oh wait a second, what is that? But now as we're figuring things out jointly, it takes 3 brains to crack open the Scott Snyder mysteries. But I found the reference to Bruce, which really bugged me.
Okay. What page is it
on page 68. It's when Sam, I guess you'd say it's around the end of issue 2, maybe beginning of issue 3. And Sam's at Petal Matter's big rich estate. And he's there. She's basically telling him that that she's kind of on his side, and her husband is the guy that owns the server farm.
But and this is also, by the way, the couple that Sam Dunes is investigating in the beginning. She's the one that paid him to find out if her husband is the one is buying these black market veils. Okay. I'm on that page and I don't see
Bruce.
Bruce. I mean,
it's okay. So it's the top. I mean, it's 2 panels, but it's their continuation panels. So it's the middle panel. It's where she says, well, I can't tell where the word balloons are pointing. Anyway, she says just before she died, she said she'd found a way too. She said she said she was just about done and would show it to me when it was ready. But she was scared, Sam. She said he was after her, the man with yellow eyes. Before I could ask more, she was just gone. So I paid someone to masquerade as Bruce and hired you.
Is Bruce her husband?
Or no,
Bruce is.
I think Bruce is Detective Collins.
Oh, I bet that is. Yeah.
I think that it's the detective who brings him to the morgue.
Yes.
And everything. Right. I think that they never say that his name is Bruce, but reading the context, skipping ahead back to issue 1, he just calls him Collins or Detective Collins, but I'm betting it's Bruce Collins.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Mark Matters is her husband. And
Oh, you're right. Okay. Yeah. I'm terrible with names and reading, like, if it's a superhero name and I read enough issues of it, I'm going to remember their name. But like these stories are kind of like one and dones, it's like I just remember characters and appearances and not so much names. So
I agree also with Shad that I like that chapter with, him infiltrating the 1518 gang that create those black market veils. That was cool. The issue where the chase scene when he's on his motorcycle, I thought it was a little bit far fetched even for a comic for him to be ramping over these cars, but you know, it is, and
well,
this is, yeah.
Don't forget that he was injected with something that was causing him to see things differently, right? Whatever that.
I
So
guess
maybe
so.
it's an unreliable narrative type of situation.
Yeah.
So
True.
you can make it more realistic that way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. You guys have any other comments on this?
Again, I think part of the frustration for me is that Scott Snyder was a little heavy-handed in the delivery of the concept. I think it would have been better received by me if it was a little bit more straightforward. I just need a little more hand-holding when I read my narratives like this. I still, though, I do like the whole concept. I like the social relevance when we're such a tech infiltrated society. And Manapul, this guy, I've never read a whole lot of stories just for his art. I know I've read things that whether it be the Legion or Batman or whatever, but he really shined in this story, in these books. I think the way he overlaid these different veils, I thought had to be somewhat difficult, but
those would be cool pages of original art to own. Some of those pages.
Yeah. Overall, it's something you're not necessarily rereading just because you want that good feeling you had the first, second, and third time. You're rereading because you're discovering new things each time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my final thoughts on it.
And Francis Manapul did the colors as well. I thought he just did art. He did art and colors, so double kudos to him on that.
Yeah, this kind of story in the wrong hands could definitely, artwork wise, could take a downward spin, but it definitely lifted it up for sure.
All right, who wants to grade it first?
I'll grade it. I changed mine.
Okay.
I was originally going to give it a 7.0. But I bumped it up just a little bit to a 7.5, very fine minus. I don't think this is something I would revisit over and over again, but I don't know if there was a clear volume 2, would I explore it? If it was on Comixology, as this one is, yeah, probably. If there's no additional, money that goes into picking it up. But it's not something I want to own. It's not something that I'd want to have in my collection. You're
adopting the Scott Reed grading scale.
I am a little bit.
It makes sense. It's great. It's great logic, really.
It is. It is.
Well, I started on what I have written down is a fine 6.0, and I'm going to go to a 7. So that fine, very fine 7.0 grade is what I'm going to give it. I think I'm going to try to read it one more time. And of course, I've said that before and not read it again. but I don't think this is something that I would want to own and put on my shelf or anything like that. But I think I would like to, figure out some of these pieces that I didn't quite get the first 2 times through. And I really don't know that you should have to work that hard at a comic to understand. It sometimes is a little bit too much work. But if I can, put in a little extra effort, maybe I'll like it a little better. But I'm riding at that fine, very fine right now.
I'm right there with you, Scott. 7.0. I might have started a little bit. I probably started there and went lower and then went higher again, just because the revelations. But I like. I mean, the payoff sometimes is good. To have to work for something, but then again, life is so short. Sometimes you're like, I got so many things I want to read. I don't want to have to reread this.
Yes.
It's one reason I've never reread Final Crisis, because Morrison sometimes just totally, his references sometimes are like, well, you got to do a complete research paper to figure out what book he's pulling from the 1950s. But this wasn't that bad, but it was a little bit more. It wasn't light reading. And that's okay. It's more me. It's me, Scott Snyder, not you.
Well, the one thing about it is it's self-contained, right? So there isn't any other thing that you have to go for information. If it's not here in this story, it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I can't complain, and I'm not like you. I might read it again um just to have that full grasp, and I don't know, just feel good about myself that I finally understood it.
Two reads and a discussion is all a book should have to have at the most, right?
That's what it took.
All right, so I guess let's just move on to our other book, the 4-issue series, Superman for All Seasons. Now it's not Superman : for all seasons. It literally is just Superman for all seasons, right? Did anybody look at on there?
It depends on where you're looking at in the DC Universe app, because the headline for it is Superman : for all seasons, but the book title in the exact same thing on the exact same page says no colon. So
no colon.
I don't
know. Okay, all right. Yes, we don't know the answer.
It looks like a comma, but it's actually Superman registered trademark.
Yes,
for all seasons.
Yeah. And then, like, you look at the covers, it's Superman all capitalized, and then subtitle for all seasons, which makes me think it probably actually is Superman : for all seasons.
Yeah.
But okay, you're gonna have to bear with me for just a few minutes here.
All right.
Okay. So yes, you bear with me for 53 minutes so far. You got to bear with me a little bit longer, right? So, so I dropped my little ChatGPT thing in. So I thought, I wonder. So I jumped on ChatGPT and I said, this was my prompt to the service. Okay, summarize the 1998 comic book series Superman for All Seasons by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale. That's the prompt. Now, it took me 3 or 4 prompts to get it to give me this thing, because the first 3 times it told me I'm not familiar with the comic book series Superman for All Seasons. Maybe it was produced after 2021 where my data ends. Okay, I won't read all that, but I finally, through that prompt that I just did, got this. Not quite brief, but here's so I think you'll get a kick out of this, especially when we get to the 3rd and 4th issue, because I think ChatGPT gets some of his facts mixed up. So all right, so here we go. So Superman for All Seasons is a 4-issue comic book limited series published by DC Comics in 1998, written by Jeph Loeb and illustrated by Tim Sale. This series explores the early days of Clark Kent's life as Superman and how he learns to cope with his powers and responsibilities. The first issue, Spring, is set in Smallville, Kansas, where Clark Kent is growing up. The story explores his relationship with his parents, particularly his father, as he struggles to understand his powers and place in the world. Okay, so far, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great job, Scott. That's
great job, ChatGPT.
I know.
GPT, right? Okay, all right. The second issue, Summer, takes place in Metropolis, where Clark has just moved to start his career as a reporter at the Daily Planet. He is trying to figure out how to use his powers for good and how to balance his personal and professional lives. This story also focuses on his relationship with Lois Lane. Now, okay, this is me talking a little bit, not quite as close, because obviously the story is told from Lois Lane's perspective, but I mean, it's not out of the realm of a synopsis. Okay, so here we go. Third issue, Fall, takes place in Gotham City, where Clark teams up with Batman to stop a dangerous criminal. The story explores Clark's relationship with Batman and how the two heroes have different approaches to fighting crime.
Talk about unreliable narrator, huh?
There you go. Yeah, exactly. All right. So the 4th and final issue, Winter, takes place in the Arctic, where Clark is reflecting on his life as Superman and how he's used his powers. He's also dealing with a crisis that threatens the people he cares about. The story also explores Clark's relationship with his Kryptonian heritage. The series is notable for its introspective and character-driven storytelling, as well as its detailed and realistic art by Tim Sale. It is widely considered as a classic Superman story, praised for its emotional depth and for showcasing the human side of the Superman character.
Well, other than just being factually wrong in the 3rd in Fall and Winter, it actually it has the overall description down pretty well.
Yeah, well, I mean, so 50%. It got 50% of the summary, right? Okay, all right. So anyway, for those of you who are considering using ChatGPT to determine homework assignments,
you might
here's
get a 50%.
Evidence. Yeah, you might be getting a 50% on your reports, right? I think what happened is I feel like those last 2 issues especially are All-Star Superman synopsis, not
Oh,
You think? They kind of
might be. It's been a while
I haven't
since
read
I've
it in a
read that.
while. Yeah, it kind of feels like All-Star Superman getting confused with Superman for All Seasons. So, but I don't know. Mike, would you like to clarify the mistakes in ChatGPT's summary? So specifically the third and the fourth issue, but as many of those mistakes as you would like to clarify.
I don't know if everyone would agree, but my source of Wikipedia is probably more reliable. At least there's some. My source for the for all the synopsis, but I'll just read fall and I'll do. I mean, unless somebody else wants to do winter, I can do both. But
you can do both. Yeah, go right ahead.
So fall, to correct ChatGPT. What's the GPT stand for?
I'll look that up. You go.
Okay, narrated by Lex Luthor, and that was the key. That's one of the key elements of the overall story. Each chapter, each book is narrated by an important character in the Superman mythos. So, narrated by Lex Luthor, he considers his control of Metropolis a love story between man and city. After spending a night in jail, Luthor plans revenge on Superman. He brainwashes Vaughn with images of Superman, declaring her biochemical expertise will prove useful. At the Daily Planet, Clark watches helplessly as Lois and everyone in the building falls unconscious. As Superman, he races through Metropolis to find the entire city afflicted and stops a runaway train. Kind of a disjointed connection there in that narration. At Star Labs, Professor Crosby informs Superman the city has been struck by a mysterious airborne virus. He confronts Luthor, quarantined in his skyscraper, and is forced to ask for his help. Luthor presents Vaughn, transformed into Toxin. She's the 90s looking character that's the tragic villain here. Toxin and Superman seed the clouds above Metropolis with chemicals, and the antidote rains down, curing the city. But Toxin succumbs from overexposure to the virus and dies in Superman's arms when they return to LexCorp. Luthor convinces Superman that he is not enough to save everyone, and Clark returns to Smallville. Somewhat dejected, I might add.
Yes.
Do we want to comment on 3?
GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So so it's a chat generative pre-trained transformer. So it's basically a chat bot that uses AI to answer your questions. So, but there you go.
Okay. Well, we didn't really give comments on the first 2 chapters, so I'll go ahead and do winter, and then we'll go give overall comments.
Sure.
So the winter chapter, narrated by Lana Lang, she reveals that she was in love with Clark, but the revelation of his powers and his departure to help save the world ended her dreams of a life with him. In Metropolis, Luthor regains his power over the city, and Lois ponders the disappearance of Superman and Clark's absence. In Smallville, Clark reunites with Lana and Pete, who chastises them for having ended up back home. Lana has dinner with the Kents when news comes of a flood. With Lana's blessing, Clark sets out as Superman to rescue the town, damming the flood, and Lana and the Kents are swept away, but Superman arrives in the nick of time. He returns to Metropolis, infuriating Lois with a front-page story, and Luthor with Superman's reappearance, as Lana finds peace with a new life in Smallville.
Okay, my first question for you, Mike, is when is Lana Lang introduced? How old of a character is she in relation to Superman? She's a lot later.
Age,
no. She wasn't in Action Comics #1.
No. Yeah. She was later.
Because Lois was there from Action Comics 1, right?
Right, she was. Yeah. Okay. Lana might have been. She might have been introduced in
Superboy number 10 in 1950.
So yeah.
So was that?
I would guess
11 years, 12 years, 30, 39
years Superman? After his introduction.
38 Superman. Okay, all right.
38 was Superman. Yeah, that's when she. Okay, so that makes sense, but it was, mostly to be the teen love interest of Superboy.
Right. Well, the reason why, after reading this story, there a lot of times in comics you have those debates like, okay, Spider-Man, is it Mary Jane or Gwen?
Mm-hmm.
Is it? So this story makes me think, should Clark be with Lois or should Clark be with Lana? Right.
It's like Betty or Archie.
Archie, Betty or Veronica, that type of,
Team exactly. Betty, Team Veronica, Team Lana, Team Lois. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's like literally this how the character is used in this story, it's like there's an argument there for should Lana be Clark's true love versus Lois being Clark's true love. So, and I think if this story had come along a lot earlier, I think that would be seen like the Lois or the Lana Clark wedding, that was done in the 80s and 90s, as opposed to the Lois, Clark wedding that we had. So
so we want to talk overall and then get into more notes.
So I guess we should say, since you mentioned that 3 and 4, right, where 3 was narrated by Lex and 4 was narrated by Lana. Issue 1 is narrated by Pa Kent, right? And issue 2 is narrated by Lois.
Yes.
So it's never like necessarily Superman's Clark's voice telling the story. He's just the focus of the story, but not actually the perspective from that these stories are being told from.
Yes. Which is interesting, and like in specifically the spring in issue 1, I started like getting a lot of like questions and like, this doesn't feel right, or it feels a little weird, and just the way everything goes through. And by the time I finished it, and I thought about it for a while and kind of read it, I was like, okay, is this because it's told through Pa Kent's perspective? Is like the him developing all of his powers within like weeks, it kind of felt like he was an 18-year-old witch, like she turned 18 and now she can cast spells and stuff. Like it kind of felt in that way. And I'm sure from Clark's perspective, he's like, I've been going through this for all of my life. But for his dad, it's just like, it just started sprouting up. And like the reaction that everyone has to him being Superman is very calm or blasé, very nonchalant. And like that's from the dad who reacted and blew up to it, but has some perspective on it 5 years later and goes, "Oh yeah, I took that just fine. I reacted with no big deal."
In the telling later, it's much, but that's easily my favorite chapter. Was the first issue, and almost entirely because it was narrated by Jonathan Kent, Pa Kent.
Yeah.
I thought Jeph Loeb captured that father's hidden anxiety, because he's hiding it to protect his kid, because the kid, you don't want your kid to see you stressing out, but he had to be stressed, and just the use of his farming metaphors is just so great. Like he said, sometimes when the corn was planted, it shot up too soon, said Paul. The roots hadn't taken hold, so the stalk couldn't support its own weight. The corn would turn sour. And he's saying, I don't know if Clark knew how lucky he was growing up in a place like Smallville. So in other words, he got a chance to grow up gradually and not getting thrown feet first into saving the world every day. But it's true, and just in a really folksy way.
Right. Yeah, it's probably the one that has the best perspective, because I kind of feel like there isn't a real big change in the voice in each issue, even though the narrator is different. Like the way it's written is like, it's not, well, I don't really feel like Lois is telling me the story. It's just that the word bubble tells me it's Lois telling the story.
Yeah. For the other 3, I believe that.
But the John Kent one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can almost. I think there's there's also a decent difference in issue 3 where we're getting it from Luther's perspective a little bit.
So maybe it's the male writer on
maybe
writing for men a little bit. Yeah,
maybe.
It could be that.
Yeah, that could be.
That. I don't know what's up with this kid though that likes to hang out on the roofs. Like
I had that down too.
It drives me nuts.
And it's not just the roof.
Oh yeah,
it's the edge.
It's the edge. Yeah.
Edges of the.
He's got his bicycle
out here. I mean, this kid's parents need to be locked up. Holy crap!
That drove me nuts for the entire series.
It's facing a cat on the ledge of a skyscraper.
Yes. It's like, who's letting this kid run around?
And evidently he's riding his bike on it, because there was a bike trail, like when it was snowing,
yes,
there was a track where his tire had been on there.
You don't see very many skyscrapers, I think, with a ledge wide enough for somebody to ride their bike on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't realize in the summer chapter, does Lois actually give Superman the name Superman in canon, or is that from her perspective she gave it, because that's her telling that story?
It had to be. It was in one of the first or second issue of Action Comics, I'm almost sure. And I don't know if it was her exactly, because she's like
her
Scott
or Perry,
said,
right?
It was probably her or Perry.
Yeah.
And it was probably super, more like an adjective, this super spaceman, super. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because I've been rereading. I'm on probably Action Comics 24, 25 now, rereading the old Golden Age. But I haven't kept track of the first appearances of every little thing.
Okay.
So it would be interesting to go back and see who gave him that that name. Maybe it was just printed in the paper and that's all you've seen. So.
Well, I'm just going to tell you that ChatGPT does not have the answer to that question.
Gosh.
So.
Okay, you're obsessed with this.
No, it's just my running theme for this episode.
You're gonna be, yeah.
He basically ChatGPT says it's Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, if you want to know who gave him the name.
Yeah. Okay. Well, technically that's right.
But yeah, it's like who in the comics gave him the name?
So, evidently, according to this is the origin of Superman on Wikipedia. It is John Kent that actually called him Superman.
Okay. Nice.
That his father calls Clark a Superman, inspiring the use of the name.
Does he give an issue number as a reference?
61.
Oh, Superman 61 or
Superman
61?
Superman 61.
Really?
Okay.
But so that's a retroactive.
Yes, a retcon.
Naming, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at the ref or the citation on that on Wikipedia. Yeah, like I said, all the chapters were really good. I thought the art was just phenomenal. I honestly liked Tim Sale's art here better than The Long Halloween, even though it was good in its own way. This was a different style to it. This was
absolutely
grand. The way these double page spreads looked and just so crisp. You couldn't have come up with a better artist for this, I don't think. Frank Quitely maybe in All-Star Superman was good that way too. And I liked there's a little similarity between Frank Quitely and Tim Sale in how Superman is drawn really bulky but not ripped. You know, he just looks like he's thick. He's just
thick. Yeah, that was the word I would describe it too.
Well, that to me is a throwback to his original appearance.
Yeah, right. Just barrel chested,
Mhm.
just big, not like super muscle upon muscle, and things like that. I that last chapter reminds me of how great of a character Lana Lang is and underused these days, really. And maybe it's because she doesn't fit. You know, right now Superman's married and has a grown kid, so it's not a character that in her original form would fit into modern day storytelling. They tried when some years ago, like in Rebirth, they gave her, I don't know if they gave her like electric powers.
Oh,
kind of like this the electric blue Superman, something like that. Maybe red electric power, something like that. But I'd say the only negative I have is that character Toxin, not necessarily in the use, but just in the design. It was so, was it thigh high boots, and it was just straight out of the 90s.
Well, it's what, 2 or 3 pages, and it's such a small part of that story, it's not that big of a deal. And this comic book was 1998,
right,
so,
yeah.
It kind of fits right in, and you could just argue that it's something gaudy that Lex Luthor would come up with.
Sure, I mean, because he was treating this woman as a throwaway piece.
Well, he brainwashed her.
Yeah,
So
I did not realize that there is a portion of Lex Luthor that is inspired by Donald Trump, and this being pretty clearly potentially one of those. But John Byrne's Man of Steel miniseries was definitely that. I was reading the Lex's issue, and I was like, man, the way they draw this, it really reminds me of Donald Trump. And so I just typed it, just Lex Luthor, Donald Trump, and then it went to John Byrne's run, and I was like, oh, I did not put that together, but it makes sense.
A lot of times before that, he was more the mad scientist type.
Yeah.
But then he becomes the rich in that Man of Steel run, exactly. He becomes that.
Oh yeah. John Byrne's Man of Steel was when he became more like the Kingpin.
Yeah.
You know, the businessman, the guy that has all the resources.
Gets rid of the green and the purple suit. Drops all that stuff.
No more super suit. You know, and that's kind of a cool. I like that personification of Luthor. Probably better than the super suit even. So, yeah. I don't know.
I like an issue 2 where Lois is nosing around Clark's desk and finds the letter that Clark's sending home, and he just has the initials LL, and she thinks it's about him.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the joke about all the Superman characters that have LL for initials.
Yeah.
Lana Lang, Lois Lane, Lex Luthor.
Morris.
Yeah.
I made a note of it because the way that's laid out is perfect, because she says, how many people do you know with the initials LL? And then the next panel is the LexCorp Tower, and it just says truth.
Yeah.
Because he's getting ready to say truth, justice, and the American way. LexCorp, but his first line is truth. Right after she says that, it's like truth. How many people do you know with the initials LL?
My note was, it reminded me of the Carly Simon song, You're So Vain.
You're so vain.
You probably think this song's about you.
Got you. There you
go. I tell you what, I didn't really confess this at the beginning, but it's my first reading of this this series.
Well, I don't know if I had read this before or not. When I suggested, I said, well, I'll reread it for us to read. And I think I confused this story with All-Star Superman, much like ChatGPT did.
Scott GPT.
Yeah. So because I don't know that it doesn't feel familiar. All right.
Okay.
I don't feel like I had read this before. So I'm definitely glad that we did read this. So
but I don't know if I read it
before.
Yeah, I just, when I was doing a little research, I found that this version of the character reappeared 3 times since the series ended, and they were all in other Loeb sales stories. First was a short story from Superman Batman Secret Files and Origins 2003, which I don't think I have. And it was just basically depicting the first meeting of Bruce Wayne and Clark. Now, I wonder if that has anything to do with ChatGPT's confusion. But then you had, if you remember those solo one-shots from 2004, there was like a Darwin Cook one. And
I know what you're
so
talking about.
there was a one that was just called Prom Night, which depicted Clark picking up Lana Lang as his prom date. And then finally, a short story in Superman Batman number 26 from 2006, entitled Sam's Story. And it's not Sam Dunes, but somebody else named Sam. Superman recounts his friend from high school who died of cancer when he was very young. Again, these were all Loeb and sales. So it definitely makes me want to go find those. Maybe they're on the DC app.
Yeah, probably. And then now, after this series, a few years later, Loeb and Sale did something similar at Marvel, where they had what I'll call the color stories.
Yeah, right.
Where they did Captain America white, they did Spider-Man blue, they did Hulk gray, and they did Daredevil yellow. And those are all very similar in style. They are all, if I remember right, they are all narrated by the main character. Probably the best one is the Daredevil one, the Daredevil yellow, because basically and again, it's been a long time since I read him. I think he writes a letter to Karen Page, who I think at that point, was she dead? I may be mixing.
A comic character dying and coming back.
Yeah. Well, no, but I mean, I don't know that. As far as I know, Karen Page has stayed dead so far.
Oh.
So, but I don't remember when she died. When the death would have been in the Kevin Smith run,
right? Yeah.
And I think that was early 2000s, and these came out in the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
So I think I think she's
right.
dead and still dead. So Matt Murdock wrote a letter to Karen, and that's kind of like the basis for telling the story. So they're all kind of similar in that regard, but it's the same creative team.
Yeah.
So anybody who like this, if you want to see something similar on the Marvel side, you've got not one but four choices in the Cap story, the Spidey story, the Hulk story, and the Daredevil. And I think it's Daredevil first, Spider-Man second, and I don't know where Cap and
Cap is
Hulk.
the last one.
But I mean, as far as how good they are.
Oh, I gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm not for sure. I'm not for sure either. But it's like
the solo
2005.
The solo book that you were talking about, Mike, it is for sure on DC Universe. It's issue 1. They only have solo number 1 and solo number 5 on there. But they do have the omnibus. If you have the Ultimate, you can read the whole collection. But the solos have always been really hard to pick up digitally. I know they've been real sparse over the years, but there's finally a collection on.
Oh, good. Because the only hard copy, I think I've got the Catwoman solo by Darwin Cook.
And that's number 1. The Catwoman is number 1.
Okay.
Yeah. There is the solo deluxe edition, but says it's Darwin Cook and Paul Pope.
It's
it's all of them. Okay.
It's all of them.
Tim Sale and Jeph Loeb and Diana Schultz. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it has Tim Sale as the writer, even as a writer and a penciler. So I guess he's got something in there that he's written in there. But yeah, I'll have to check that out too.
It's weird. Is the deluxe edition on there that has all 12 issues, but they only singularly have 2 of the issues?
Yes. Yep.
Well, it's just recently that they add a lot of collected editions with your Ultra subscription.
Yeah.
So it's with that.
But that's the thing. If they have it processed for the definite deluxe, then I sometimes wonder why they list single issues and don't just whatever you have it all.
It might be incentive. It might be teasers to get people to go from the regular tier to the next.
I bet it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna get that and the Marvel ones. Read those. Well,
I did like the artwork. Sale's artwork in this was a lot tighter for sure than his Batman. The Batman stuff almost feels like he's drawn it on black paper. Like it is. It's that dark, like it's almost Batman animated series, like the way when they were animating on black cells instead of on white cells. But I definitely dug it. It felt like it was almost watercolor colors to it. I know it wasn't. But there were times when it was so bright, so vibrant, so Easter to it, and I dug that a lot.
Now that you have pointed out the similarities there, the inspiration for Lex Luthor by John Byrne as being Donald Trump in the late 80s, I can't unsee that now. Because Luthor has hair, and it's not just, it's kind of wispy and, all over the place. So.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to grade this one?
Yeah, certainly.
So I'll go first. All right.
8.5 very easily. Which is a very fine plus.
I actually went up from this. Also, I raised on this one as well after talking about it. I'm at an 8.0, very fine. There wasn't a lot of meat to this, and that was where I wanted a little bit more. Through issue 2, I didn't even know what the plot was for this. I felt like it was just a retelling of an origin story, and then I felt 3 and 4 definitely had a little bit more of some structure to it. But I felt a little lost, like I was just kind of listening. Felt like I was reading one of those little like 8-page origin story things that they put out, but just longer and in way better quality. But writing and artwork was awesome. It was just took a little bit to get off the ground for me.
Yeah, well, I'm at a very fine minus 7.5. It's not quite, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Is just the fact that it's not substantial in any shape, form, or fashion. It is just another pseudo origin story for Superman, which honestly is the best Superman stories are the origin stories. Thus, like Man of Steel, the Byrne series that we talked about, well, it's a new origin story. Those are the best stories for Superman are his origin stories, which is why they can't ever do more than 1 or 2 good Superman movies at a time, So, so I can't convince myself this is something that I should go put on the shelf. So that's why I've got it just below that threshold of where I feel like I need to buy it. Because I think if I gave it an 8, then I'd be obligated to go out and buy that absolute. And I'm just not. I'm not ready to spend that money on that just yet. So,
you talk about putting it on the shelf. I've got what literally I call my top shelf comics on my top shelf of my bookcase. So I consider the premier. This is probably second tier, not top shelf, but the second to the top. And you guys are absolutely making fair points about it not being all that substantial, and maybe that's a negative in some ways. But for me, it's like the palate cleanser after Clear. I'm like,
absolutely.
I can breathe deeply and just feel the fresh air of Smallville, Kansas, and not worry about whether I'm looking through a veil or is this real or not. And but it's sometimes everything's relative. So when you read something before or after something else, it has a bearing on how you perceive or enjoy that next.
Well, and it's like you were talking about the Snyder run on Justice League earlier, right? And it was kind of like, why does every single 6-issue story arc have to focus on the end of the planet or the end of the universe?
Yes.
Why can't we tell something? And it's like, you're 100% right. I mean, this is it's like that well-written story that's it's not flashy, but it's just well-written, well-drawn. You should be able to appreciate it. And I'm talking myself into actually buying the absolute and putting it on the shelf. But I'm still not quite there yet. I'm like at halfway between that 7, 5, and 8 right now.
I feel like as soon as I buy one of these, I have to I would want the whole Tim Sale and I would want that collection. I want the Loeb Sale collection.
Well, I wonder if the absolute will have in those other stories that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I didn't look to see what was going to be included in the absolute.
That's true.
But also, Chad's talking about the Marvel ones too. So
I want I'm gonna have to get Long Halloween, Dark Victory, The Win in Rome. I like.
There's no saving us. We talk ourselves into these things by the end of the
episode. Well, speaking of the end of the episode, would we like to do a CLZ shake before we head out of this? So. So who wants to go first? I got it open. Should I just go ahead?
Yeah, go for it.
Let's see if I can get the glare off of it. Oh, we have an X-Men book. Okay. So so I've mentioned before that sometimes I pick up some books that have a quote unquote controversy associated with them. So this is one of those controversy books, and I'm actually I'll read the controversy out of it from Key Collector. All right, which is why, and this is just one I bought a collection. I was flipping through. I saw the quote unquote controversy, so I just set it aside, stuck it in my collection. I don't think if I ever go through and purge that this will actually stay in the collection. Okay. But okay. And this is, let me just go ahead and find this here. So this is a parody issue of DC's Invasion limited series. So Mike, you would appreciate that.
Yeah.
There are cameo appearances of Chewbacca, Yoda, Jabba the Hutt, Boba the Fett, and alien xenomorph E.T. and Alf.
Whoa.
And then here's the quote unquote controversy of this one. Jean Grey appears full frontal nude in this issue, but it is at a slight distance, so that specific detail is absent. So it had is one of those keys in Key Collector. And again, I was flipping through a collection. I set it aside. It's in the stuff. It probably won't survive a purge, but it's in there for now. So
sort of a novelty key.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like I like to collect those Rutland, Vermont's parades, Halloween parades, and
or the
crossovers,
DC characters in Marvel comics. The Green Lantern being drunk under the table and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I reminded I seen that again when I was filing away comics. And I'm like, why did I get this again? That's why.
Yeah. Okay, so all right, so that was mine. Somebody next.
Okay, I'll go.
We didn't get to see it.
No,
my shaker's broke.
Your shaker.
Oh no.
There it goes.
There we go. Okay. Can you read?
Flash.
The Flash, Volume 1. And this is, I can tell already, this is later This is probably early 80s because it was when they were doing those 8-page. Oh, this was the 8-page backup of with Firestorm, and that was drawn by the ever-loving George Perez, his first published work at DC, doing the Firestorm 8-pager. Yeah, because the Flash story was by Don Heck, and I probably barely read that. I went straight to the Firestorm story with George Perez, and it's he didn't take long because it wasn't long after this. This was Flash number 289, September of 1980, and he's battling the sort of dual characters of Mr. Element and Dr. Alchemy because they are really the same person. Yeah, and so it's I was in the late 80s or late 70s, early 80s. I was a teenager, young, 13 or so, 14. So I was old enough to be making money and also old enough to be spending every dime I made on a comic book.
All right, Chad.
All right. My shaker's a little delayed as well. Ooh, this is the Horizon Zero Dawn Liberation issue 4. Horizon Zero Dawn being a video game.
I was gonna say it's a video game tie-in, right?
Yep. Yep. And Liberation being the second story arc. And I really like the visual aspect of that video game, and so when they decided they were going to do a comic book that was tied to the story and kind of bridging some gaps, I was into it because I thought, well, comic books is pretty visual medium, so to be able to continue with that, and they didn't do bad. I mean, it's just like any kind of video game tie-in. They're saving all the good meat for the video game itself, and they're just kind of telling a little side story, but not too shabby.
So, which did the chicken or the egg come with you first, Shad? The game or the comic books on this and most of your other ones that are.
This one would have been the game. I played the game first, and then and that's probably the way. I'm not a big let me buy the comic book and I'll see if I like it and then I'll go play the game kind of a thing. Though there are some games that I'm like, I'm never gonna play that, but if I know that there's a comic book adaptation of the story and it seems interesting enough, I will read the comic book to bypass the 50 hours worth of gameplay that there is to it and go, I read the comic, that's good enough.
Though I am going to say I am interested in the Last of Us game now that I have watched the first episode of the Last of Us HBO Max series. So, which I'd never played the game.
Yeah.
And I think it's more FPS. So I'm not really going to be super into that, but I may
don't know what
to.
FPS means.
That's me.
First-person shooter.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, first-person shooter. So, but again, I haven't played it, so I don't know for sure.
I played a little bit of it, but I ended up. You have to take care of the little girl at some point, and I was like, I'm not good at taking care of anything. I can barely keep a houseplant alive. So I'm out. Those games where you have to make sure somebody doesn't die are not the kind of games to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's the type of game where I turned the difficulty all the way down because, like you were saying, I want the story, not so much
exactly
the fast twitch reflexes and make it as impossible as it is to get through.
Exactly.
And that's probably what I would do on that game. Is if I bought it, I'd turn the difficulty all the way down and play it for the story.
Yeah, I'm that way now too. My fast twitch muscles are not as good as they used to be. So. But I'd seen this advertised. I'd never played it. I haven't played a computer game in, good gosh, a long time. But it really, when I hear you guys talk about it, especially first-person shooters, that was always my jam. Half-Life and Duke Nukem and Doom and all that stuff. I'm really dating myself here. But
is first person where you don't see your body?
You don't see yourself, right? Yeah, you just like the gun in front of you or whatever. Yeah. Third person is over the shoulders, and then you have the isometric top down, which is like the first Diablo where you're looking down over.
Yeah.
So I think that game is a third person then would be over the shoulder.
Yes.
Yeah, I think The Last of Us is that.
Well, let me look. I guess I could get a screenshot. Not that didn't mean to completely derail.
Oh, it's okay. I think there's going to be a remaster of it coming out real soon. It's called. So you could wait and get the real nice looking one.
Like I did. Well, I had to wait for the Spider-Man game.
Oh yeah.
Because it was a PlayStation exclusive for the longest time.
Yeah.
And then they remastered it and released it on PC. So I'm looking for images now of Last of Us, and all the images that I'm seeing are actually, it's just like it's not even a third person. It's just like a regular, like an adventure type game. Of course, now everything Last of Us is flooded with the scenes from the TV show,
right? Of course,
placing the movie, and I'm probably just seeing like cutscene videos. So, yeah, it's hard to say what it is exactly. So, all right. So, if you want to reach out to us, we now have the email address podcasts@bergcomics.com. All right. And then otherwise, Mike, if somebody actually, do we know where we're going next, Shad? We haven't even talked about it.
Yes, we do.
Oh, we do? Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah. Episode 152, we're going to be covering Truth, Red, White, and Black, and Rachel Rising, Volume 1.
That's right. All right. So, Mike, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, where would they do that at?
Well, the alternative to the podcast at bergcomics.com is if you want to send it directly to me, doesn't matter either way. It's m.atchison90@gmail, or you can reach me on Twitter at MikeAtchison5.
Shad, what about you?
You can find me on Facebook at Shad Schubert, SHAAD SCHUBER. I don't know, Schubert, SCHUBERT. There we go.
And I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at bergcomics.com, BURG comics.com, which will have links to my social media, eBay store. And we'll be back soon with Rachel Rising, which I'm particularly excited about, and that other story that's not quite as important. We'll talk at you soon.
The worst thing that they did was get rid of the app. The app, yeah. I mean, they lost probably $100 almost a month in sales on me because the way that everything was lined up so easily, I just anything that was on sale, I was like, oh, I want that. I've bought so many books digitally that I will never probably read. Yeah. Yeah. I think you represent a lot of people on that side. Yeah. It's so hard to navigate it now. Yeah. Oh yeah. I gave up. I haven't bought it. I mean, the only books I buy digital now probably are direct from. It's like small press, like Scout. Like you can buy their digital PDFs straight from their website. Yeah. So I'm like, oh yeah, we'll just go there or Kickstarter or exactly, or something like that. Humble Bundle. I've bought a couple things that way. Well, I don't know. I bought Nottingham for $1.97 on Comixology. I read it. Though it didn't panel by panel it. It basically took every page and broke it up into a quarter. Oh. Yeah, so you're reading a quarter of the page at a time. It's like, well, if you want to read it, I had to stop reading it by panel and just read the entire page. It was really bad. That's a lazy man set up for the panel. Well, you're trying to save you didn't want to damage the high value. Yes, that's what I read it in bed, so I didn't have to have the lights on. There you go. So that's why I did it that way. You know that signed edition? Yes, that's actually right over there by my Rocketeer statue. So there we go. And okay. So Scott Sheens, I guess, is the manager, and then it was in Sydney, is where the store is. Okay. Yes. He was pretty proud of himself that I had him sign. Oh, I love it. And then he was like, how they do when it's dry. Don't close this. Don't close that yet. Yeah. I'm gonna put it with my Immortal Hulk Director's Edition that's signed from somebody in Australia as well. So. Hey, that was awesome. That was one of my favorite spots.